How's it going, everybody? Gunnar here, and today I want to go over this dropper jig method that I've been posting on Instagram. So yesterday I posted this picture, and today I posted this picture, and I'll kind of leave them up here for a little bit so you can look at them real quick. But what this is it's a functional way to tie a jig fly. And what I mean by jig fly is simply a fly that's tied on a jig hook intended with the hook point to be up. And jig hooks are simply just hooks that then have a bend going up, creating a lever arm so that your weight is more functional and it helps to control the keel of that hook. So my favorite thing about this method, this dropper jig method, is it doesn't impede your fly tying in any way, shape, or form. There's no system, you don't have to prep anything, it doesn't go in the middle of the fly, it's not lead eyes that are going to go at the head and then you have to use a specific head to pair with those lead eyes. But it's something that you do at the end, which means that you can fix flies that you tied in the past that didn't have the correct weight balance to them, that didn't keel properly in the jig fashion that you were going for. So you can fix old flies, but you can also adjust the weight if it's too heavy and you don't like the way it fishes. Tie lighter weight. You can use lighter weight and simply extend it down farther to make the leverage more effective. Alright guys, so I'm coming in. I have a 2-aught Ahrex jig hook, and you can use the 2-aught, the 4-aught, the 6-aught. You can use whatever hook you want. You can even use this on a jig hook you've already tied and salvage it if it didn't have the proper weight system. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with 40-pound. I'm going to come in with 40-pound monofilament. You can use wire, it doesn't quite matter, you can do whatever you want, but you want something stiff so that this thing isn't falling and flapping around and getting in trouble. But you want something nice and stiff. And all you're going to do, it's quite simple really, but I'm going to, let's see if I do this right here. And all you're going to do is take the 2 tag ends and push it through your bead. So I just have my bead and a loop here. Then I'm going to take my tag ends, push them through the loop. So I basically did a loop-to-loop knot. You can see as I cinch that down, you see these ears, that circle that it's creating. I want to try to show you guys this real quick. These are ears. I'm going to call these ears, and that's going to be really important because if you cinch this down really tight, you pull really hard, you're like, hey, that bead's probably safe, but you didn't really lock anything in place. It's just the loop. The loop can go back over the bead and it can come off the bead and back over the bead, so there's technically no knot on that. And what you want to do is you want to take those ears and you want to run your tag end up through the ear. And what this essentially is an overhand knot that you're doing on either side of the bead. And so those are your ears with your tag ends going through it. Cinch that down, and that is going to lock that bead in place so it can't go anywhere, do anything, get loose on you. And then I suppose if you made this long enough, you could, put multiple beads on here, successive beads. Maybe they'd clink together. You could get a rattle effect. You could use smaller tungsten beads and do multiple ones, right? But that's just for fun. So I'm going to get back on the vise here. I'm going to come in with some thread. I've been using monofilament, but I broke it the last time I tied, so it's not spooled up. So you just come in with any old thread. Doesn't matter. I use the monofilament because it dries mostly clear. And then all you're going to do is I'm going to use the kind of, you see how my mono has some memory to it? I'm going to use that to my advantage so that the mono is leaning forward relative to my hook eye. So instead of going way back here, I'm going to try to get it like that, more or less, for the correct balance. And I'm just going to pin that to the side. Suck that up to the distance that I want to create my lever arm. That'll be successful. And this is just a demo hook, you guys. Note, this should be a fully tied fly right now. This should be a completely fully tied fly. This is just to demonstrate what's going on here. I'll show you guys recipes later on. Then cut your excess tips away. And then once you get to this point, all you're going to do is come onto this monofilament here and just simply tie a parachute post, basically, onto this mono and help it to stick together, and then create a nice angled wedge in there to help lean that forward. And it's really quite simple. And then what I would do is, if this is your first time doing this and you're not sure how long to make your lever arm, you're not sure how heavy you want the weight to balance it, just do like 2 whip finishes, and maybe 3, and take the fly fishing, and see if it's too heavy, if it jigs more than you want, less than you want. If it doesn't keel right and you need to make this, you know, a 1/4 inch longer, an 1/8 of an inch longer relative to your weight, I can just come in with a razor blade, cut this off. Doesn't affect the fly at all that would be tied, right? I can just come in and cut this off and then change the length, change the distance, change the bead size, change the number of beads, and truly finesse that fly to get it to do everything I want for whatever conditions I'm facing, to get down on a floating line, to drop the same rate as my sinking line. Whatever you're doing, you can truly fine-tune it after the fly is tied without anything impeding the actual fly itself. So, check it out. And something that I want to go over real quick is simply what it is, which is an increased lever arm and how that works. And I don't intend to make this overly complicated, and I'm sorry if it comes across that way, but basically there's two ways to adjust your leverage. And this is a rod, it's going out, this is where it's connected to the wall. Now this is 2 feet out, it's a 2-pound weight, you got 4 pounds of force. It's really that simple. It's your weight multiplied by your distance. That's a lever arm, it's a moment force. The moment force is 4 pounds. If I double my weight, I double my force. It's 8 pounds of force because I doubled my weight. 2 times 4 is 8. It's that simple. Now in this system, I could double the weight but keep the distance the same and get 8 pounds and they'd be the same. That's basically a lever arm. It's really that simple. Now what you have to understand about a jig hook is your lever arm on the hook, this little bend right here, it's fixed. I can't change that. So the only option I have is to add more weight or add less weight. And if you go to a 4/0 or a 6/0 hook and you can't get it to ride weight, you have to use a lot of weight. Maybe I had someone comment on my picture, 1/20th of an ounce of weight to get that hook to ride correctly, right? That's almost heavy enough to cast on a spin rod. Like, it's a lot of weight. But what my system does is, instead of using more and more and more weight, I simply make an extension to make my lever arm longer, and it allows you to use less weight but have 100% authority over the keel of that hook. And if you mess it up, you just cut it off and do it again, and that way, and you just make it longer or you use slightly more weight. So this is a 100% fail-proof way to get your jig hooks to ride hook point up. And my favorite thing about it is that in no way, shape, or form impedes your tying of the fly, which means you can convert any recipe that you like to a jig fly. Because it's just this, you just tie the fly completely normal, and then this is all after the fact. So I want to share with you guys a story now, and it's kind of why this came about and how this came about. So I've been working on this for maybe like a year, and the solution came pretty quickly, but I just didn't really register that it was the right solution until about 2 weeks ago. I kind of just fell in love with it. So I had discovered Bob Popovich's Jiggy Fly, and the Jiggy Fly, I bought Pop Flies, his first book, and was just enamored with it. The thing's a true work of art. And the Jiggy Fly I was fascinated by because it's a jig fly that rides hook point up, but the weight is circular, and I'll draw it for you real quick. But quite literally, it's a hook, not a jig hook, a normal hook with a cone head, tungsten bead. Now Popovich now has like a tungsten extruded head that he uses. It's pretty cool. And all of the fly is tied on top of the hook, simply like that. And I thought to myself, how's that going to ride right? Isn't the hook just going to keel over? And this is when I discovered what truly a stabilizer wing is. And that's what that is. Boom, stabilizer wing. And what's really cool is if you take the bead out, you just put some bucktail right there, that fly will ride hook up completely weightless. And what physically happens is and this is how bend backs work. This is what a bend back is, just without bending the hook. But the whole hook drops down and it pivots around the bucktail. So your bucktail is a neutrally buoyant material. In the water column, it lifts up and resists dropping in the water column because it's all tied right here. So it's pivoting off its tying point, and now this entire hook mass, which is sagging, being held in place by the attachment point, becomes keel weight, and you get a hookup design that's weightless. Really cool, and that's basically your bend back, your original bend back fly. And so Popovich's Jiggy Fly relies on this stabilizer wing mentality, material on top, fixed at the eye of the hook, to ride correctly. Now, that was a total epiphany moment for me. I knew that kind of principle, more material on top will help it ride right, but I didn't understand why. Hopefully that enlightens you a little bit. I think it's a pretty cool principle. But as enlightening as it was, it pigeonholed me in my rationale behind tying a jig fly. And what I mean is, this is a pretty good example here, but I could only create high and tight flies because I could only stack everything on top of the hook, so each stack got successively more high and tight. I couldn't create a mullet silhouette. I couldn't create anything with any bulk to it. And so I was just frustrated by that, and this was a spread fly that I had tied using that technique, and it came out excellent, but it's fairly technical and hard to do, and I had to come up with a unique recipe to get it to work right? And I'm trying to make something that's truly like a platform that everybody can build off of, and that's what this ended up being, this dropper weight. And so after that, I went to Brazil, and I tied a bulkhead jig. The bulkhead jig that's in episode 3 of the Beginner Predator Fly series. Probably my favorite fly that I fished down there. I thought the thing was just absolutely flippin' phenomenal. It was really cool. But that was kind of a happy accident. I had a 2/0 hook. The wire's not that thick. The gap's not that big. And I had a large tungsten cone. Now that mass on that length of a lever arm worked. That bulkhead fished hook up no matter what you did to it. It was a phenomenal fly. But when I got home, I tried to tie it on a 4/0, and I tried to tie it on a 6/0, and I tried to make it bigger for pike and muskie, and I failed. Because the 4/0, the 6/0, bigger gaps, thicker wire, but my lever arm was not truly getting any longer, and I didn't want anything larger than that large tungsten cone. I didn't want to have to add more and more and more weight because it becomes less and less friendly to cast. I wanted something that truly balanced the fly, and not something that was just like heavy, if that makes sense. So, in my frustration, I kind of tied up what I was trying to create, like a control, just to see what happened, and I tied a jig fly without any weight on it. And what you have to understand is, quite simply, if you tie a jig hook with nothing on it, right, no weight, I mean, and then you just, you put a fly on here, or whatever, however you want that fly to look, you create all this neutral buoyancy right here. Not only do you have your hook gap keeling, but you also have your lever arm keeling, right? So the thing rode hook down no matter what you did to it. And when I tested it and saw what it did, of course, that's what I should have expected, right? But I was like, it's a really cool fly, and I wanted to save it. And so I just tied something on that lever arm. I literally just was like, well, shoot, what if I just tie something right here and just drop it down, and then I can add some weight, right? It didn't really occur to me. It was just kind of like, well, let's just see how that works, right? And I learned that you kind of want to have that kink forward. You want it to come forward so that it's like in line with your attachment point, so the fly drops head first. If you leave it too far back, it'll like sag and it won't ride level, and it does weird things. So you want to, I'll show you how you do the parachute tie to get that to kick out forward. And it was just like, okay, that was cool. That saved that fly. And what I didn't understand is that simple technique of tying it only to the lever arm of the jig hook, it allows you to tie every fly recipe you want and make it hook up. All you have to do, you just treat the hook as if it's a hook. And you tie an imposter, you tie a fuzz junior, you tie a jerk junior, it doesn't matter. There's a 2/0, a 4/0, and a 6/0 option from Arex, and there's other companies with other sizes, right? You can tie whatever recipe you want from here back. It's the same. It's just a normal hook. And then, boop, you just close and open your eyes, and you got a lever arm on there. It should be a slightly steeper lever arm, a little steeper. And so from here back, everything's normal, literally. From here back, everything is normal. And then at the end, once you've tied the fly, little dropper weight. And so this was the coolest thing ever because it allowed me to tie big, bulky mullet silhouettes, sucker silhouettes, chub silhouettes. I was completely free to tie whatever I wanted because I was no longer restricted to a stabilizer wing, high tying successive stacks on top of each other, but I could treat it like any fly, any hollow fly, any bulkhead, anything I wanted. In this case, a 360-degree jerk junior variation, super high and tight, thin, nice tall profile, right? This is the thumbnail for you guys. and it's just a normal recipe. I don't have to change anything or do anything different. And what's really fun is if you get the weight wrong, normally on a normal fly, if you got the weight wrong, you throw it out and you'd have to try again, right? It's a learning curve. You got to make 5 or 6 mistakes before you find what you like. Well, in this one, I can just cut it, or like just cut it off. Just tie everything down, do 2 whip finishes, don't super glue it, give it a test run, see that was too heavy, that was too much weight, that was too light, I need a longer arm for that much weight wasn't enough to keel the 6/0 with that short of an extension, right? And you just fix it, you just go back to your vise, 2 minutes later, boom, you have a perfect hookup fly. So that is the dropper weight extension system. It's extremely simple. And so what are these flies for? If you're just curious, you know, the advantage of a hookup fly. For me, it's all about structure. It's all about if you want to pitch that thing on a drop-off, like right on top of a drop-off on a big sand ledge, maybe you got timber on the ground, maybe you got a rock shelf that's only 2 feet deep and you want to pull it off the rock shelf. When I was in Brazil, we were thrown into super heavy trees. There's like trees were everywhere. That was the structure. And having that fly hook point up, sinking over those trees, I probably reduced my fouling and my snagging in the flies I lost by 75% just because the hook is up. And what you have to understand is that little dropper, well, it can flex and it can move, and if it gets caught on something, it'll just bump the fly up over it. It's not going to get lodged in there and get you stuck. So you have a hookup presentation for fishing heavy trees, heavy timber, rock shelves, sand shelves, anything like that. And of course it is semi-weedless because that hook is up, you don't have something exposed, and that little mono thing will just bounce off of weeds just like anything else. Now that's kind of the beauty of it. You have a very exposed hook point on top, and that's increased hookups. And what you have to understand about true weedless flies is the more weedless it is, the more fishless it is, right? And I think this is a really cool compromise. Instead of saying tying on a Texas hook or something like that, you have a really nice clean offset point that you can bury, like on this big bulkhead. It's fairly buried in that winging material. It's not super exposed, right? So you can hide it by how you stack your fly and create a nice tie wing, or a high and tight wing that's going to cover that hook point, and you'll have a semi-weedless fly, but you're going to have far better hookups because you have a nice offset hook point from your hook eye. So that's the dropper jig method. Hope you guys dig it. Thanks for watching. Give it a try and stick some fish. See ya.